And in fact, I think we have some continuity there because one of the levers to get things moving is also regulation and standards. So Paul will talk about that, and I will do the introduction. So, yeah. So Paul Waller from National Cybersecurity Center. Paul works on advancing practical deployable cybersecurity at national scale. So again, scale, that's good. And at the NCSC, he focuses on how technologies like CHERI and memory safety translate into real risk reduction and adoption across critical systems. So up to you now. You need to press on the button to get the green light. No, this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
There's a light, but I'm colorblind, so it might be green, it might be red. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
That sounds like a good start. Brilliant. Okay, I think you're right. This does follow on quite well in terms of what are the levers for getting people to take responsibility. And some of the levers that we have are around standardizing regulation, liability, rules, and so on. And it's important to think about how we do that with something like memory safety, because in a community like this, it's really clear that there's a huge amount of consensus that this is necessary and everyone understands what memory safety is until you try to write it down. And then you learn pretty quickly that actually what's in everyone's head about what memory safety is isn't actually identical and is subtly different in really quite interesting ways. And I've been learning that a lot recently through this work. It's very hard to require companies, developers, supply chains, systems to use a property unless you can write it down in a clear and consistent way so that it can go in a procurement contract or it can go in a compliance framework or be in some form of regulation. So it's really important to figure out how to write it down and actually write it down. Some people realized this a little while ago, and several of them are in the room and wrote a paper that made this very clear, calling for standardization of memory safety. Let's write it down, let's agree what it means, and then we can use it globally. So that paper's great, I recommend it. We need a standard. So let's create a standard. So a group of us proposed a work item in ETSI, which was mentioned earlier because it came up in the European government discussion as one of the sort of feeder providers of standards into the EU CRA process. The E in ETSI does stand for Europe. It's hosted in Europe, but actually it's a global organization with global membership. The standards are fully public, so it's a great place for us to engage and create something that can actually be used worldwide. It's certainly not restricted to Europe. We proposed a work item in ETSI on memory safety, convened a group and have been going through the process of codifying what we actually mean, which has provoked, I think, what we'd call a lively debate. It's been excellent taking part, as you can see, the snickers are for people who are definitely in that conversation. It's an important part of the process to actually thrash out what we mean, figure out what those disagreements are and deal with them, and write that up. And we're making great progress within ETSI. Another reason for choosing ETSI actually compared to other SDOs, that's standards development organizations, to expand my acronyms, is that the final document is public and freely available. Not always the case. Some of the big SDOs actually have a paywall, and we really want to make sure this is freely accessible. So ETSI is a great choice. And that work continues. It's public when it's finished. It's not public while it's in production. We're working towards a public review. And that's really important because a critical part of developing a consensus is that consensus covers everyone. Not everyone is a member of ETSI, and so there will be a chance when that document is public for people to provide feedback for the group to take account. It's really important that we get consensus across the board in a global marketplace. So that we can come up with definitions and properties and levels. So how do we encourage people to improve by defining a set of levels of a sort of progression as memory safety evolves? What are the kind of technologies that make sense, and how do we compare them in an impartial way? So that public review will happen, and then the feedback will get taken on board. If you want to be part of that process, the only way to do that is to join ETSI, and I do encourage people to get involved with this process. Companies and institutions, organizations can join. The fees vary depending on whether you're a large organization or a small one, so it's very manageable, and it's a good chance to be part of an important debate on this and a range of other topics. So Look forward to hearing from us on that public update. I'm going to finish there relatively early and start to think about questions, but I think this is an important step to enabling that next step of assigning responsibilities and liabilities. We can't ask people to procure memory safe systems unless we can explain what they are. And I guess it's important also to mention that this is a technology agnostic process. So what we're not doing is saying everyone should use CHERI. What we are doing is saying everyone should think about memory safety and be really public and commit to what they are doing in future, so that we can compare. And I think that there are numerous ways of solving this problem, and one of them is this one. And what we're really trying to address is the large number of systems where currently nothing is being done, and encouraging more effort to be made to make a choice and improve things. And I think that will, a rising tide lifts all boats, as we say, and that will be an opportunity for this community as well as an opportunity to improve resilience across the board. And I think that relates back to the question of how do we assign responsibility? If we can encourage more public declarations of roadmaps, intents, technology adoption, it becomes easier to compare different offerings in a public way and in a measurable way, and to really understand who's doing the right thing and which organizations and stages of that technology stack are putting the effort in to improve things. So I'm happy to do questions and maybe test my throwing arm, or maybe delegate that depending on how far back questions actually are. I'll happily go for that one. That's very manageable.
You want to okay.
Based on the bandage, we'll just do that, shall we?
A slightly obtuse question, but is there a place for CHERI Alliance in these roadmaps you talk about? Some standardization, some visibility to make sure that, I mean, obviously talking to corporates, they're difficult things to get information out of, but is there a place for the Alliance in that regard, do you think? Or could there be?
Do you mean in terms of creating roadmaps, or?
Well, in terms of, say you go, pick on any major company, whatever it might be, company X. You want to know what they're doing. They have their different ways of presenting roadmaps, but could that be a standardized thing? And could that be something where the CHERI Alliance could contribute so that in effect you're aggregating, as it were, and making things conventional, which should make it easy for people to engage in the conversation rather than their own inevitable complexity?
Yes, I think so. And this is all kind of uncharted territory to some extent, right? But you can see a world where we were somehow encouraging companies to make public commitments to how they might solve these problems in future. Memory safety is complicated, as I'm learning and as everyone else is aware, especially when you try and apply it in practice. Systems are actually combinations of components, all with different properties, and actually how you talk about that coherently is a lot harder than it sounds. But one of the things the Alliance could do is make that really easy for people who are using CHERI. So take the pain away from, if you use this technology, we've got all the paperwork done. We know how to make this simple, everything's straightforward, and some of these problems just go away. Whereas if you're trying to figure out which mitigations to apply on which components, and you have a whole range of them across your stack, which in practice is what most people will have, it's going to be a real challenge to explain to people. So it could be a function of the Alliance to make that easy and really help people. If you are using this technology, here is how you explain it to people. Here is how you go to the board. This is the case you use for why it reduces your development costs, why it improves velocity, why compartmentalize everything makes it easier to manage technical debt. Like, these are all things I believe are possible. I don't currently have data. I don't currently have that pitch sharpened, but the Alliance could have that on hand and ready to provide, so that if you were the technologist looking to present to the board on your technology choices, the Alliance makes it really easy to present CHERI as a way forward. No, I think that would be one way to do it.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's work for you,
one there.
Adam.
Oh gosh, yeah, I can do that actually. Who is it next? Yeah, Robert. Sorry, Ben. Oh, yes.
Success. Standards are in some sense themselves a supply chain in which standards depend on other standards. There are sector standards, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine for a moment we get the ETSI memory safety definitions and assurance levels sorted out. Where do we head next from there to continue this effort to make it obvious that CHERI is a good choice for all of those places?
some of the answers to these questions might be in the room rather than at the front. But I do think there's the standardization effort, in my opinion, needs to be tech agnostic. So we're talking about the benefits of types of resilience and of understanding the problem. And then I think there's a role for the CHERI Alliance and for this community to sort of step up and say, this is how we meet those requirements in a really manageable way. So there might be not so much of a standard, as in a sort of formal standard with a capital S, but something that this group standardizes on as a, here's how we explain the benefits of what we do, and maybe some effort to quantify that a little bit. So again, to build on what Dave said, I think we have a gap in terms of making a strong business case for CHERI. What are the research challenges in that, and what sets of skills do we need to do that we might not have had in the development of the microarchitecture and the years of innovation and effort that you don't need me to explain to you and into that.
Yeah, we're all gaining new skills as we do this, aren't we? Yeah. I mean, I actually meant in the other direction. So I think, to me, it seems natural, although I don't understand the shape of it yet, that someone will want to sit down and explain how CHERI and Rust and all these others meet these memory safety goals, because that's a way for them to demonstrate to people trying to conform to the standard that they're doing these things. I actually mean more in the other direction, is once you have these definitions, how should we go about promoting the use of these assurance levels and definitions in requirements?
Yeah, so maybe even draft procurement type things. And again, I'm no expert in producing these, and we need to find people who are. But can I help you write your procurement request so that it includes sensible things?
Yeah. And maybe we can turn to this community a bit to find out other things we should influence as well. Yeah.
Yes,
thank you.
And another thing close to my heart on this topic is the transparency side. So how do we make it really easy for someone to explain what they're doing? And I don't just mean technology choices. I mean in the running of the thing. We're hopefully getting towards a point where there are examples of software stack where the CHERI version and the non-CHERI version are sort of alive in the wild. That gives us a really good chance to compare vulnerabilities using all the CVE databases and so on, and really observe that the severity is lower, the quantity is lower. In a world where you have these technologies, I don't think we've really taken the chance to do that yet. But we've got CHERI BSD, we've got browsers, we've got other things. We could really start to develop stats on whether the CVE marking changes, vanishes on the CHERI system. I think that would be a cool way to do that.
Yeah. I'll hand this back. Oh,
Another question. Okay.
I've opted not.
Thank you. One comment and one question. I feel that there might be a lot that can be learnt from the way that system safety is dealt with, particularly in the aerospace industry, that they have various standards for working that the products have to meet, and the way that system safety has evolved over time might help with talking about security. And there's obviously an overlap, but in terms of process and so forth, there might be something to gain there. The question was, could you give some sort of an example of the sort of disagreements that you've had on the committee?
Oh. Well, I'll talk about your comment first, certainly since a lot of the contributors are actually in the room, so I'm setting myself up for a fall there. But I think you're right that there's lessons to learn from safety, and actually, if you look at what NCSC is proposing to do with principles-based assurance, a lot of that follows the same path of claims, argument, evidence, and having to actually publicly or transparently say why a particular statement is true in a way that might even be legally defensible. And so the regulatory liabilities kind of come first, and then those things come in. I actually think in some of those scenarios, it makes sense to speak less about security and just say, you have to be safe. You still have to be safe even if you're under attack. And therefore, if you have a vulnerability, your role as a supplier is to convince me that it's still safe, or fix it, or explain that it's not, and we have to take some kind of corrective action. So I do think there's a parallel, but it's slightly different when someone's out to get you versus a random failure. In terms of discussions, I think we've been trying to partition the different types of memory safety, things like temporal, spatial, there's a ton of others, even trying to figure out exactly what that list should be and then precisely how to describe it turns out to be a really complex thing. And I think it's unfair to say lots of disagreements, but lots of conversation around the right way to do that, and then make it correct, but then make it clear, and then make all the other sections of the document hang together. Turns out to be quite a complicated piece of work. And I think the group's done a great job of that. And one of the things I should have said right from the start is that it's really important that we've got a good mix of, well, governments such as myself, but also industry contributors from big and small companies, academics, including from here and other places, and from around the world. This is multiple countries represented, multiple companies, large and small. Really important part of this, and I think we'll expand that even further when we go to public review. It's really important that what comes out makes sense to software communities, hardware communities, the different architectures that are out there. And so that discussion is inevitable. It's a sort of really important part of the process. I think we got through quite a lot of coffee, but that's an important part of creating standards, because otherwise you publish a thing and then everyone disagrees with it and it's too late by then. So we've got to kind of get that all in up front and hammer it out, and then we can use it. How am I doing for time?
Thank you very much.